On this episode, we will be discussing significant crises, including suicide. Should you or anybody you know need help, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1 800 273 TALK. Again, that's 1 800 273 8255.
Birds are in the sky.
What makes a warrior is how they see challenges and adversity as opportunities. Warriors grow, prepare, and prevail through their crucibles. Whether you're active duty, retired, or veteran, whether your battlefield is in entrepreneurship, business, or just climbing life's ladder, you'll gain some of what makes a warrior. Insight. Lessons of grit, adaptability, and the warrior's spirit will inspire you to smash through anything that stands in the way of your mission. Buckle your seatbelt as fellow U.S. Marines, Emmy Award winner Colonel Riccoh player, and international best-selling author Zachary Green interview fellow warriors and share how they conquered their crucibles.
Yes, sir. We're gonna smoke them.
All right, Cyril, we've got a pretty difficult session coming up here. So this is something I just want to warn our listeners as we hit episode 12 here.
Episode 12.
We're going to get into some pretty heavy stuff, and I'd love to introduce our guest, Brandon Areata, who has an incredible warrior journey to share with us. So, Brandon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little background on you and kind of jump right into it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Anything my journey can do to try and help somebody else, it's well worth it. But my name is Brandon Arriata, and I grew up here in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Went K through 12 here. My family from a different culture. They're from Argentina. My sisters were born in Argentina. I was an accident here later. And
A surprise.
as some of yeah. I think it was more accident than surprise. And but in any event, and was in the accounting and consulting world, and then got into owning a restaurant because I grew up in food and beverage here at Hilton Head, and everything was going great on the surface, as things do, and in my more materialistic kind of world. And then our son Alex, I have 4 kids, so at that point had been married 20 some odd years happily, and business was going great. 4 amazing kids, and our third in birth order, Alex, was 9 years old in 2015, and was diagnosed with cancer. And so then everything changed. Suddenly the business didn't matter, just put the business on cruise control. Stayed with Alex. In 2016, we lost Alex to cancer. He was 10. He started a nonprofit, Lambs for Life, which is the shirt I'm wearing, and to bring comfort, hope, and support to kids with cancer. And so I went into that. And then our second in birth order, son, Coatsy, he was really depressed from that whole battle and journey. And 2 years ago next week, Coatsy committed suicide. We found him hanging from his ceiling fan in his bedroom when we went to go wake him for school one morning on January 13th of 2020. And from that, I responded in working with the White House and our state governor for some mental health initiative that we were successful with. And then right on the heels of that, finally that was just a bit too much for my wife, and she disappeared with our daughter, and they've been missing now almost 20 months. And so from that, I responded by initially by just drinking for a month, and then had a spiritual moment and was saved on the beach one day, and just changed that part of my life around, saw things a little bit different, lost 120 pounds or so running every day, and created a economic rapid recovery platform for government, and I'm working with government right now, selling that to them and managing that property for them, and expanding significantly the scope of our nonprofit. So that's basically the little background and more recent history. And so there's been a variety of crucibles along the path. And so my philosophy is just, it's really simple, that I try and convey to people, and that's that you don't control people or events in your life. You do control your response and how it shapes you. And so I've tried to really focus on that in order to channel what can be very powerful emotions, very dynamic emotions, and try and channel them equally powerfully, but into positive change, as opposed to letting it get you to where it has gotten me a few times. And then it's a matter of acknowledging that and turning it around and using that incredible energy that is there, but instead of against you, for you and with you and for others.
And I think you are such an incredible living testament, Brandon. I'm so excited you're willing to be vulnerable and share the story with the guests. I first met you about a year ago, and there's people you meet in life that have a negative energy, and they walk into a room, and before they say anything, they suck all the energy out of the room because they've just got that negative look on their face and everything. And then there's people that walk in the room, and just by their mere presence, everybody gets happy. That's Brandon. The first time I met Brandon, he lit up the entire room, worked the crowd like he'd known everybody forever, treated me like a brother within 5 minutes of meeting him, had no idea what this man was going through. And I'm like, if a guy like Brandon that has gone through what, I don't care how much of a warrior you are, what he's gone through is more difficult than anything I've ever heard in the military or out of the military. And to still be able to have that energy and that beauty that you possess and share with so many people around you, you're an incredible person. But I just can't imagine, and that's what we'd love to talk to today, is how you're able to take all that adversity, go through your crucible, transform and change, and create such a positive force for other people, not just through your charity, but just simply through your presence. Your presence is a gift to everybody that gets a chance to meet you.
I've been tremendously blessed with the ability to do that, and I really have been, because you know, there's a stark contrast that I've experienced. You know, I've been there at that moment where you just want to give up. You know, you're done fighting. You're tired. You know, it's so draining, and you don't see the end point. But I think what fuels so much of it is to the perseverance factor is faith, God. I mean, that was absolutely the reason I'm alive right now. You know, I, by many standards, shouldn't even be alive, just from knowing the dark places I had gotten to not that long ago. And then in terms of, you know, being able to be positive or seemingly positive all the time, I think that a lot of that I try, and people ask me all the time, and so what I've kind of come to is I have all this incredibly powerful love that I just can't deliver to my kids here. And so I just try and deliver it to others. And you can either do that, or you can become embittered and angry and have it turn against you, and these people you love are gone, and it's absolutely not what they would have wanted that love to be transformed into. You know, if anything, transform it into more love. And then at the same time, you can inspire other people and help other people in their situation. And then, you know, people will say, "Oh, how selfless," or something like that. It's really, so many times it's really not. It's a little bit selfish, even in that it helps me. Yeah, I was running the other day, just 3-4 days ago, at Jarvis Park, and I was running, and there's this woman and her daughter's probably 9 or 10 years old, and they were walking in the opposite direction. So as I would lap them each time, I'm looking at them, and I was running really fast. I was probably going 8, 9, 10 miles an hour, and just running, and just kept running, and every time I would pass them, the little girl would light up and smile, and she'd wave at me, and I'd wave back at her. And then finally, at the 4th time I lapped them, she was waving me down, so I took my earbuds out and stopped and talked to her, and she's just like, "My gosh, you run so fast and you don't stop. I've been watching you the whole play. You never stop." I was like, "Well, I stopped over there and changed the music for a minute, but yeah, pretty much I just run." And so we just start chatting. I don't chat with people when I'm running. I don't just stop and, hey, how are you, that sort of stuff. And I'm not running to lose weight. I'm running for my head. It's an incredible gift from God that running, what it can do for you and bring you clarity and focus. And if you're feeling funky, it just kind of washes it away. You know, you kind of rise above it, and you can almost look down on it and get a different perspective as you're running. And so I was sharing a little bit of that with them. I didn't share my whole story of grief or anything. And then, but I sensed this moment, and they sensed a moment. And so then they shared with me. They were walking because they were depressed, and they heard that walking can help with depression because that little girl's dad, that woman's husband, had just died from cancer. And so we talked, and so I stopped and tried to counsel them. I counsel people all the time on grief, just because all I basically try and do is, and what I did with these people was to say, you can get here, this place where I'm at, and to better places. And you can get to a better place than where you're at. And I'm living proof of it. And this is what I did that helped me. This is what I did that really didn't help me. But I don't try and tell them, do this, don't do that. Because what if you say, don't do this, but they're doing it? Now, in kind of a way, you've gone and judged that person. And you've judged and said, you know, you're doing the wrong thing, you're doing bad. And like, that's what they need to hear. You know, so it's just, that's my basic format. Next week I meet with a family that their son committed suicide a year ago in 2 weeks. And he was 15 years old here on the island, and that'll be my 10th or 11th family. There's a lot of children that have died on this tiny little island just in the last year. But it silences people. It's so devastating, and the dynamics are so complex. And it destroys, it's like a tornado inside the house all the time. And that's one of the motivating factors for me, is because I have found peace. And from the cancer battle with Alex and the organization he created, it began to provide a platform for where then I felt an obligation to share, because I was blessed with this ability to be able to reach people, or to be able to also reach very high levels of government and just influencers and stuff. And so I refused to let anything silence me. And I've been temporarily silenced a few times, but it's really important to me. And it's the whole reason I'm here, is that I'm willing to answer any and all questions in the hopes that if it helps one listener, and then it's well worth it. It truly is. And it's one of the reasons I'm still alive, is because that's my compelling sort of obligation and responsibility with being here. It can't just be about me. Oh, I feel great, now I'm going to go enjoy my life. Well, help others get there, because there's a lot of people suffering out there. And whether it's vets and all the trauma that is misunderstood and lack of resources to even deal with it, you know, in the world itself, all those kind of issues that happen to normal people through whatever it is. You know, like with a kid, it could be that their parents are getting divorced, because it's hard you can't compare pain. Pain is relative. So people tell me all the time, they'll start sharing with me, but then they stop, because then in their head they realize, oh, your pain is so much worse. I can't even begin to. And so if it's one of those things. If I had a nickel for every time I heard, I can't imagine, or your pain is so much worse, or mine can't compare. And so the first thing I just tell people, you don't need to compare. So if you stepping on a nail is the most pain you've ever experienced in your life, and it's unimaginable to you, then it's relative. I didn't know this other pain until I experienced it. And people don't realize just how strong you can be. So it's not that I'm strong. I think everybody's strong. And just everyone hasn't been tested. It's the same, just like in your book, talking about how, when you go exercise, just the science of it, you're pushing yourself, you're breaking yourself down to make yourself stronger. And so you don't know until you've been pushed. And it goes back to the whole thing of you can't control whatever pushed you, but you really can. You can control how you respond to that. And most importantly, you can control how that forever shapes you and what you learn and take away from it, how you live your life afterwards.
Wow. Brandon, I have like 30 questions here. I'm not going to ask 30 questions, Zach. 30 questions here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for being an example. I think the thing that resonates with me, I had a couple things. One was you can get to a better place. You know, and when we keep it simple, and that is one of the Marine Corps' fundamental pieces, is keep it simple, stupid, kiss. It makes a whole lot of sense. You can get to a better place because with suicide, no one has an answer. If we had an answer, it wouldn't be happening as much. No one has an answer. But as a leader, entrepreneur, business, military, I think we owe it to those we lead to investigate anything out there that can make a difference, even if it's for one person. And the other thing I wrote down is that you don't need to compare. I guess as fleshy humans, that is our, knee jerk or blink response is to immediately compare. No, just, we have two eyes, 2 ears, and one mouth. Just watch and listen more than we talk sometimes, and sometimes it's that simple. But I can't applaud you enough for sitting here and unpacking what is extremely heavy, extremely complex and complicated, and hard to talk about. I think that there's so many dynamics in the suicide discussion, but if we're not unpacking it, then I think we're doing a disservice to the humanity at large, because no one has an answer. It's plaguing America, and no one has an answer. So we've got to start somewhere. Thank you.
It's just such a complex set of dynamics involved in whatever suicide or mental health problems, and so by keeping it simple, you're not trying to address each and every little thing, because there's so many things you're not even aware of in that person. Everyone's wired differently, and sometimes all someone needs is to know that simple message that you can and you will get to a better place, and by standing in front of someone to prove that. It was 3 weeks to the day after we found Coetzee hanging, that within a couple, there was the whole planning of the funeral and all that, which that first week is just a blur. But then after that, it was this realization of childhood cancer impacting the entire family, and how the norm is to, you're going after the kid that's on fire. You're trying to put out this fire, you're trying to fix this cancer, and everybody else is going to be all right. You're just really focused on that. And resources are like that. Doctors are like that. The whole, everyone treats it like that because it's, you got to save this kid.
Right.
Well, in the meantime, you have all this collateral damage that's occurring all around you, and you can't see it. You don't really recognize it. And so we lived it. And so within the first week of when Coetzee died, I went on all the airwaves and all the networks, because I had already had this platform from childhood cancer and all these people that were wired into our journey. And it was like, I just felt that, okay, I need to address what just happened. I need to get out there and just talk about it, and thank everyone and ask for some time. So I went on the airwaves, did all that. That's still a blur. That was like, I think maybe even in the first week. And then all these families contacted me from all over the country that they had lost their similar stories. They had lost their child to cancer, and then 2-3 years later lost the sibling, another child, to suicide. And it was this familiar footprint. And so my thought was, okay, we couldn't save Alex due to science, due to whatever, right? We couldn't save him. But we could have done better by Coetzee and all the Coetzees in the world. And so I came up with the Childhood Cancer Family Protection Act to provide comprehensive mental health services to the entire family, emotional, psychological, because what happens when the kid gets sick, in the hospital. Their infrastructure is there, social worker, everybody, to help that kid, because the kid is scared, confused. It's a child with a potentially life-threatening disease. How does the child process something like that? You know, and so you have these resources on hand to help that child do that. But the other children who are also children, they're not getting access to this kind of resource. And you don't even think about it. You're like, you'll be fine. You're not sick. You're not dying. You know, and even like, you know, if they have an issue, you're almost just like,
It's not cancer.
you know, get focused. Your brother has cancer, you know, and you just start dismissing stuff. And it's very natural. It's very natural. And the kids are, you know, the whole childhood cancer thing silences families too. It's one of the problems with childhood cancer being so underfunded and everything, is that you hear about someone that survived or did not survive breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, all kind of different cancers. You don't really hear you hear about someone who had childhood cancer. You don't really hear the story because it just silences them. Over 90% of the families end up in divorce, even if the kid survives. Like the divorce rate in childhood cancer is absolutely dramatic, and we somehow survived that, but not round two on the death of another child. And so when all these families reached out, it made a real impact on me that, okay, there's something that's not being addressed out there in society relative to suicide, but we kind of know what caused it. You know, so now suddenly we're not where we were at a minute ago, where we're like, well, we don't even know. Well, here we know. You know, we know. Surely we need to do something about that. And I was already working with the Trump White House, and they were very supportive and incredible after, like, immediately when Coetzee died, and as well as our senators and all kinds of other government folks, and had pitched this to them. I put it in a decipherable sort of business form and said, you know, this is what I think we need. And I'd worked it out. I saw that we had the infrastructure. We were just going to need some resources and some training. So we needed money. That's all that one came down to, money and authority. And they said, you know, well, let's pilot this. And they put me in touch with Governor McMaster here in South Carolina, who I didn't have all my stuff had always been federal government, so I didn't really have state government relations.
Okay.
And so 3 weeks to the day after Coetzee died, I went in and met with Governor McMaster to do my dog and pony show, and I had like a 15-minute meeting scheduled, and that's all you really get with those guys. And then if they like it, then they decide within 5 minutes, and then you're given to Bob or Susie, and you know, work with them, and you know, let's get this thing going. And then really the balance of that time is for the photographer to come in, you do a little photo op and all that stuff, you know, but your business time is like 5-7 minutes. And but he asked me when I came in, and he said, you know, I've been debriefed on your whole story. And I'm sitting there in the governor's office, and he said, I don't understand how you're standing here in front of me right now. It's been 3 weeks to the day. And I said, well, there's this little tiny island that you govern filled with people praying for me. And that's how and why I'm here. So I really need you to listen. And so he did. And then he canceled his next few meetings, brought his whole team in, and we worked it out and hammered it out right there over the course of 90 minutes in his office on his desk. Trump White House said they'd pay for half of it. So boom, we're off and going. He assigned it to MUSC as the agency, the official agency that would have it, because they receive public funds, and so they're an agency. And at the same time, COVID was happening. Because this was now in February of 2020. Okay. So we'd already cut off China travel, and you know, we've already done some stuff, and COVID was creeping in. And so that is now still a little bit on hold, but it's funded and it's ready to, we've started building the task force for it. But it's just how you can either let that moment eat you up and spit you out, or you can let it inspire you and try and figure out how you can prevent this, how you can help other people. And that's always been, I've always enjoyed helping people, but I was more selfish than I was helpful, typically through life. And it wasn't really until Alex died, not even when he got sick, and he started that started to change, and then it wasn't intense until, and it's sort of like the more intense your crucible, the more intense potentially the good or bad fallout is from it.
Fair enough.
And so as things got even more
The pendulum
intense,
swings the same distance.
as it got more and more intense, then my responses seemed to get more and more intense. You know, they're sort of proportionate to one another, if you let them be.
Sure.
You know, my immediate response, because then I did all that stuff with government stuff after Coatsy died, but still as tuned in as I thought I was, still didn't really see what was going on in my own household. And that was, my wife was starting to act strange. The dynamics were really funky. We'd been together 28 years. We'd survived Alex's. We'd gone through hell and back, and then she disappeared. You know, I was having lunch with someone one day and about the mental health stuff.
Okay.
And at a restaurant here, Main Street Cafe, and we're looking out into the parking lot at a window seat, and there's only one other table because it was COVID, so they could only have, and then shortly after that, indoor dining was shut down.
Right.
It was like right at the height when you couldn't find toilet paper and all that stuff. And so I'm sitting here talking to a guy from the church about it, and I look out and there's policemen on foot everywhere, and they're all looking at their phones. And I was like, hey, it looks like there's like a manhunt or something going on. And so we're just sitting there waiting on our food to come. Then the food comes, and then I haven't even taken a bite of it yet. And the whole reason we went there was I was craving a burger, and Main Street Cafe has great burgers. and so burger gets there. All of a sudden, a cop walks in the restaurant and comes straight up to the table, looks right at me, looks at his phone. He was looking at a picture of me, and they were looking for me. And so he said, how are you doing? And I said, I'm fine. Can I help you? And he said, why don't we go to the hospital? I said, I'm all good. I appreciate it. And he said, no, let's go to the hospital. I said, no, thank you. I think we should. I said, are you saying I have to go to the hospital? And he said, yeah. I was like, well, and I probably can't take this with me. And I am a smart ass, and so I'm sure he didn't appreciate that, but I was like, I can't take this with me, can I? He's like, so he handcuffs me, puts me in his cruiser, takes me to the emergency room. They strip me, take everything from me, and give me some scrubs to wear. They put a bouncer outside the little stall in the ER, and they leave me there for 35 hours. No medications, food, water, nothing, and won't answer any of my questions. And so then another cop shows up at the 35th hour, can't use the phone, anything. The whole time I'm just freaking out, thinking about my daughter, of, what can she possibly think where Dad is, and does she, and if she knows I'm in the hospital, what could she possibly be thinking about that? Just couldn't stop thinking about my daughter. And then another cop comes and gets me, puts me in shackles, like feet, the whole thing, and puts me in a cop car and takes me to North Charleston and puts me in a psychiatric prison against my will. And they still won't answer anything, and the whole intake process and everything is like about as humiliating as it gets and about as traumatic as it gets. And so I get through that. It takes like the better part of a day just to go through that whole process at a psychiatric prison. There's all sorts of things I got to do. And so then I get through that, and I'm finally in front of someone that can tell me what on earth is going on. And they said, well, the court has deemed that you're homicidal and suicidal. I said, what? I said, I just met with the governor about mental health legislation. This is crazy. No, I'm not. And they said, well, we're going to hold you here for 15 days.
What?
The whole 72-hour thing, hold that people talk about, that's the first hospital, has 72 hours to hold you and find somewhere to send you. And then the other hospital can pretty much keep you as long as they want. And so they had determined I needed to be there 15 days. And I said, I don't think so. And so then I'm called, they let me use a phone. It was a little prison phone with like a little metal cord against the cinder block wall. I'm calling my wife off the hook. She's not answering. I'm thinking, all right, what the hell's going on? I've been now missing for 2.5 days She's not answering the phone. COVID's going on. She's not anywhere. You know, why isn't she answering the phone? Meanwhile, I don't have my phone, so I can't look up phone numbers. And in this new age of smartphones, you don't know anybody's phone number.
That's right.
You know, I used to remember everyone's number. I had like this crazy memorization thing for phone numbers. And then once it was smartphone, I was like, no, don't need that super ability anymore. And so then we go. So then I all of a sudden, it was like the Lord put a phone number in my head, and it was the governor's chief of staff's phone number. And I hadn't even called it that many times. How I would remember that phone number was beyond me. And then he put another phone number in my head, which was our then Congressman, Joe Cunningham, was our congressman then. And I'd gotten to know him well, and I had his cell phone number. And anytime I'd called him in the past, it was to leave him a message, and then either he or somebody, you know, whatever. But he never answered the phone. So I remember somehow these two phone numbers. I called both those two phone numbers, and both those guys answered their phone, of which neither of them ever do. And, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm horrible. I'm in a loony bin. You got to get me out of here. And so then it took them 2 more days to get me up.
Even the governors.
They have no authority over that. The only thing, in the end, all they were able to do was to tell the hospital, listen, we don't think he should be there, and so we're going to audit those medical records once he ever does leave. And if there's anything wrong with it, you know, it could interfere with your funding.
Gotta get their attention.
All of a sudden, teams of doctors were coming in, and you know, when I was at the loony bin, I'm talking to each of them. They each said, you know, well, let me get on this. I'll call you back. And so I told the woman at the front, I said, listen, there's a couple of different phone calls that are going to be coming for me any moment now. So I'm just going to kind of sit over here. And God only knows the people she has to deal with. I mean, it's a loony bin. You know, so she was very dismissive. She said, look, patients aren't allowed to receive phone calls. Get away from my face.
You're like, the governor's going to call me. Yeah, sure, the governor's going to call
yeah,
me.
exactly. I said, no. And I didn't even bother because I did think that far, like, oh, she's not going to believe it.
Right.
I said, look, I just want to let you know. There's a couple phone calls that they're probably going to make you get to me. I get your policy. I'm not trying to violate it. But just FYI, a couple phone calls are going to come in. My name is Brandon. I'll be sitting over here.
Okay.
You can sit wherever you want. No. I got you. So I go sit down. 2 minutes later, phone call. So I go over there, and then that's how all those wheels in motion started. Meanwhile, can't get in touch with my wife at all. Finally, on the day that I'm leaving, and I'm in scrubs, no one's giving me any of my stuff back. I can't prove who I am. I don't have anything. I'm just a guy in scrubs in another town. Call my wife and say, she finally answers the phone.
Okay.
I was like, why have you been answering the phone? I've been busy. And I was like, okay, whatever. Listen, I've been at the loony bin. I know exactly where you've been. And I was like, well, you know, what is going on? She said, well, you know, you're going to have to be there for another. I said, no, I took care of that. I'm getting out of here tomorrow morning, so I need for you to come up here and pick me up. Well, I didn't put you there. You're going to need to find a ride home. And hung up the phone. That's the last time I've ever heard her voice. That was May 20th not last year anymore, 2020. And, well, it turns out she was the person that put me in there. She went and said I was homicidal and suicidal, because then when I got back, she was gone, all the accounts were closed, my license was gone, passport, birth certificate, both the cars were gone, my daughter's gone, all her stuff's gone. I just come back to an empty house with nothing and can't prove who I am, can't do anything. And so my response to that was, after I couldn't find them, and was, well, I'll just drink a lot. Like a lot. And so I drank like 4 bottles of wine starting at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Not even an all day thing, just to be numb. This was just to be able to somehow figure out how I'm going to go to sleep. And so I would drink 3 or 4 bottles of wine, go to sleep. It's horrible sleep. Wake up, equally horrible, and do the same stupid thing all over again. And just did that for like a month. And that was my response. And that's where anyone, and I share that with people to share that, you know, I've been there. You know, you can respond this way, and you can let that moment take you on a horrible dark ride. Because from there, then all the things she was claiming I was that put me in the loony bin, I was now becoming that because of my response. And I control that response. I didn't control her or what she did,
Right.
but I control my response. So I started walking on the beach. There was no, I wasn't going to work because COVID had shut the whole island down. And so I was just drinking and walking around. And so I started walking on the beach. I weighed like 300 pounds. And started walking to the beach, and then this would be like June, July 2020, and then started walking and praying, and then just had a moment where all of a sudden I was at total peace. Like before, the triggers that I had before, which were like a million of them. Any little thing that would suddenly just like trigger me into a depression or anger or some kind of negative emotion. They didn't exist anymore. I was just totally at peace. I had a completely different mindset and perspective. And then I just didn't want any more wine. And so then I didn't drink a drop of any kind of alcohol for 7, 8, 9 months, something like that. And then just started jogging. Never done that before in my life.
Okay.
On the beach, and then started running. Way never done that before. And the only time I'd ever run before, I was really young. I was like 17. There's like this 20-something-year-old girl, and she's like, "Yeah, I really enjoy running. You want to go running?" I was like, "Of course I do. I love to run." And then after that period of time was gone, I never ran again.
Okay.
And then started running, and then and it started helping my head, and I started feeling better, and I started having clarity, because when you get down, whether it's from drinking, whether it's just from your own mind playing tricks on you, but once you get to that dark place, it just feeds itself. It's the snowball effect, where you start a little, you roll snowball down a big hill, and by the time it's at the bottom, it's enormous. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
The abyss is consuming you. The longer you're closer to that
it draws
abyss,
you in, and it's easy. It's easy. It's easy to just keep sliding as opposed to climbing.
Right.
Climbing's a lot harder than sliding. And so I just kept sliding, and then all of a sudden I found myself in a place where my head was different. And so I started climbing. And I was only climbing to do things that were making me feel better. So like the running was only just to get my mind right.
Okay.
But at the same time, I was dropping like 12, 15 pounds every single month. Because I was also not craving any of the weird foods anymore. It was the weirdest thing. Like after Alex died, and I had not an equally powerful spiritual moment, but where I had some spiritual peace after Alex died, I was eating for comfort. Like eating anything and everything near me just to feel better, comfort food stuff.
Right.
And we had restaurants that made it even worse. But it was very different this time. And some of that I think is like back to that conversation of the more intense the challenge or the crucible, that if you do get through it, the more intense the response and the strength that you achieve from it. And so you can look at adversity and say, I almost like it because I'm at a mindset to where it's just going to make me stronger. So I dare you to bring me adversity at this point.
It's a warrior mindset.
You became unbreakable.
And
you are unbreakable.
It is an unbreakable mindset, and I like our friend Rich. He said, we were talking about that one day of just, not that I'm fearless. I mean, I wouldn't want to fall out of a plane without a parachute or something like that, but I don't really fear anything. And A, my trust in God, and then B, what I've experienced, to know that, what is fear. It's you dealing with the unknown. But Rich said it best when I'm the same way, because if I was able to survive all the stuff in Vietnam that I survived, and then come back to this world, start a new life, and then survive. He also lost his son to cancer. He said, and then if I was able to survive that, I can survive anything then.
Brandon, this has been incredible. I have a lot of questions, but honestly, I just don't feel adequate. I think you've covered every possible thing. So I don't know if you've got any last save rounds that you'd like to share.
The only saved round is in listening, learn more and more, and that you've mastered one of the Marine Corps fundamentals. Know yourself and seek self-improvement. You are the picture of that. So I thank you for that.
Well, as we come to the end of our cast, we honor one of our former veterans that has passed, and Ricco's going to share with you who we're going to dedicate this episode to.
And today we will dedicate it to Margaret A. Brewer, 82 years old, a retired brigadier general who was the first woman to hold the rank of general in the Marine Corps and who led Marine Corps Public Affairs Division late in her career. She died January 2nd, 2013. General Brewer joined the Marine Corps in 1952 and held a variety of roles in officer recruiting and training, personnel management, and public affairs before she was appointed a brigadier general in 1978. As a colonel, she had been director of women in the Marine Corps since 73, but her position was eliminated in 77 as women were integrated more fully into the Marine Corps. After serving as deputy director of information, she was nominated to lead the division, but the director was required to be a general. General Brewer reorganized the department, which was renamed the Division of Public Affairs before she retired in 1980. Because the Marine Corps did not allow women to be generals at the time, General Brewer received her star by special appointment from President Jimmy Carter and approval of both houses of Congress. She was a board member of the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation late in her retirement, and she spearheaded the development of the National Museum of the Marine Corps.
All right. Well, we'll finish today's episode as we always do.
Semper Fidelis.
Thank you for listening to The Warrior's Voice. If you haven't, please subscribe to this show and be the first to hear new episodes with fellow U.S. Marines Riccoh Player and Zachary Green. You can also visit www.warrior-framework.com to learn more about how you and or your business can use the Warrior Framework to conquer personal and professional crucibles.